Effectively securing your organization and its reputation requires a smarter approach. To maximize efficiency and minimize risk, security experts turn to LogRhythm, the only leading solution built solely for security teams by a security team committed to your success. With Next-Gen SIEM, user and entity behavior analytics, network traffic and behavior analysis, security automation and orchestration, and compliance, LogRhythm provides security made smarter. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, your contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observe-It combats insider threats by detecting risk activity, investigating in minutes, effectively responding, and stopping data lost. Give it a test drive at observeit.com/securityweekly. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/ESW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I am still here with Tyler Shields. And just a quick announcement. It's a kind of funny. I met Jonathan, I believe, for the first time at an InfoSec World event in Orlando, Florida. And that's happening next year in 2019, April 1st through the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort. It's a really cool conference. We really get a lot out of that show and have met a lot of really cool people. Good talks and the like. So you can use the registration code OS19-SECWEEK, and that gets you 15% off the main conference or World Pass. It's a good excuse to visit Orlando and attend a really cool show. So now we're talking about the news, which is always interesting to weed through some of the marketing and press releases that are out there. And the first one we have is from Netscout, which sounds like a combination kind of play. Like it's DDoS protection, but it's also some threat intelligence with that indicators of compromise, buzzword thrown in there. And I feel like if you were to look at the market as a whole and look at who could potentially help you with the indicators of compromise, you might come up with a couple hundred vendors.
Yeah, easily. I mean, I'm looking at half of our news this week, and it's everything's a blend. Everybody seems to do everything these days, so it's kind of hard to sift through it.
Yeah, I tend to draw my own kind of quadrants and put logs in one, and then I put network in the other, and then I put threat intelligence in one, and then I put endpoint in the other as the four kind of major sources of data that you need to make sense of, that you hand off to your SOC, or if you don't have a SOC, if you're a security analyst, that they have to go in and find bad stuff that is actionable, right? And we're all messaging now on, many vendors are messaging on that operational efficiency. But I think it really boils down to those four, different categories. And then, are you doing that internally? Or are you doing that in the cloud? What is the perimeter today? Also kind of enters into the equation. I think that's where Netscout is kind of messaging on, is that perimeter protection.
Yeah, back in the day, it used to be pretty clear, right? You had your network stuff, you had your app stuff, your net security, your app security, and those were kind of the two major cuts. But with the death of the perimeter and everything going cloud and everything going zero
trust.
My brain. Thank you. Zero trust networking. Everything's kind of shifted where it resides. I look at security this way. Every security vendor, every security product really it has three components: a data collection, a data analysis, and an actionable recommendation. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it that way, every market is doing the same thing, really, when it comes down to it. It's just they're collecting different sets of data, analyzing it differently, and creating a different actionable intelligence out the back end, which is why the security market as a whole is so fragmented and so overlappy, and why everything kind of blends together.
Yeah, we run into that too, because we don't want direct competitors to be, on the same show or, doing the same activities with us. And that just keeps getting harder and harder because they're all essentially competing with each other, largely to Tyler, to your point of, 10 or 15 years ago, I think it was much easier to say, I got a solution for this and a solution for this. Now everything's just merged together. Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking of it.
Absolutely. 10, 15 years ago, you were the network security guy or
Yep.
the app security guy, or maybe you were the wireless security guy if you were cutting edge and kind of the new kind of stuff, right? And then you had the mobile security guy. It doesn't work that way anymore. The stack view of it is completely eroding.
Absolutely. It's not too often that we'll cover a vulnerability in a security product, but, as it's software, it's going to have vulnerabilities. I think that most security companies, in my experience, Tyler, are really good about addressing vulnerabilities in their own product because of the space that they're in. And so we do have that going for us.
This reminds me of the Gobbles era. I don't know if you remember this that far back.
Yep.
Yeah, when Gobbles and crew were like attacking all of the security vendors and just ripping them to shreds, right? And so they're not immune to it. Security vendors are the same as any other vendors in the sense that they're writing code, and they're going to write code that has bugs in it. And some bugs, the only difference between a bug and a security flaw is the intent of the attacker. It's literally the only difference, right? And so it's gonna exist whether you're a security company or not, and it's just whether you create systems up front to try to minimize it, and then how you handle it when it happens, right? And that's what's going to tarnish or make your reputation successful afterward.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that it's Splunk, and not because of any knock on the company, but just the sheer number of lines of code that Splunk has at this point is pretty large. It's a big surface area to protect.
Yeah, I mean it's an enormous application system. It's an enormous system to look at, and the flaws range, right? They range from cross-site scripting to denial of service to a bunch of different affected components, path traversals. Most of them appear to be at the app layer, and how they're parsing inbound data, which is very, very normal, very standard.
Sure.
So I'm not surprised at all. I like the fact that they put them all out. They fixed them, and they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take ownership. We blew this, and then just move on.
Yep. Yeah, and that's taking ownership, I think, is the important part there, right, in maintaining your credibility as a security company. Because the security community understands that these things happen, and it's how you deal with it. No one's immune to any type of security vulnerability. The end of
I used to, back in the day when I was doing the consulting and research side of the house, we used to submit the security flaws to vendors all the time, and we submitted to a ton of security vendors. And it was funny how some of them, your security vendor, you think you should be on the ball on how to react to this, but back then, I think it's gotten much better, but back then, so many of them would be against fixing it or pushing it away or pushing it back. But I think we've come a long way over the last 10 to 15 years on disclosure policies and how to handle disclosures, and creating systems and processes internally to these companies to handle them. Now that I say that, for every one that we find that has a good system and policy, we'll probably find 10 that don't. But right. I think it's gotten better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Splunk was also, that was Recorded Future in Palo Alto. So Splunk has that ecosystem, right, where they have the add-ons. Palo Alto has that same application framework. And I think this is a pretty good marriage of the two technologies. It's threat intelligence done correctly. You're taking in those external sources of threat intelligence. And the important thing is, in an automated fashion today, applying those to your internal controls and relating it to what you have in your network. Not taking those external indicators and having to go do a hunt. Like, do I have this? Am I protected against this? Do I have this condition? Has this attack happened on my network? Because it happened on someone else's network. So maybe that means it happened on my network. That's the wrong way, in my opinion, of thinking of threat intelligence. But being able to automate that and say, well, we've got this, indicator, and yes, it's real. And now you just go talk to my Palo Alto firewall and we block it. That's the right approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is the future of where AI and ML actually provides value to security. We've been listening to pitches around machine learning and artificial intelligence now for, at least 5-6 years. And the majority of those pitches are pretty much garbage. There's just not a lot of value in the AI and ML that's being put into place. I think we're finally getting to the point where if we can apply AI and machine learning around automating what the SOC analyst does on a daily basis, and we can we can get to the point where we have 99.9% accuracy on 80% of the SOC analyst's work. We can show an ROI, right? And so leaving the SOC analyst to attack that last 20% of high value, of having to go out and actually hunt it, right? That's where the AI and the ML is going to fall down anyways. So if we can get the artificial intelligence to generate a really good engine around the 80-20 rule, that's where I think we're going to find the most value from some of this. And it's interesting. I think we're ripe for a reinvention on the SIM market in general around some of these automation hooks into other systems within our environment, so that the SOC analyst doesn't even have to look at it. It's just fixed.
Chris Breton came up with an awesome scale to define similar to what you're talking about, Tyler. And I don't know if you've seen this, but he said, look, if you take a scale from 1 to 10, right? And 1 is obvious false positive, completely normal traffic, nothing to worry about. And 10 is like attackers have just basically been savages inside of your network and setting off every bell and whistle and alarm. He said, look, he's like, most analysts, even senior analysts, or even if you take the senior analyst, right, they can look at that 1 to 3 and go, yep, that's normal. Like really without much investigation, it's just kind of intuitive at that point, right? They can look at that 8 to 10 and go, yep, that's definitely a problem. And like I lived this when I worked at university, right? We had for that time tons of data, tons of traffic, all different systems. And when he said that, I'm like, yeah, when I would get in the morning, I'm like, yep, that's the 1 to 3. Crap, create some tickets, that's the 8 to 10, and spend the rest of my day in the 4 through the 7 and figuring out what that is. And I thought that was the best explanation of how, SOC analysts and security analysts work today, and products really need to address that middle and have us spend less time there.
Assuming an even distribution, which I know there isn't, but assuming an even distribution on that scale, you just cut out 60% of your day.
Yeah.
Right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so if we can get AI to do that and then automatically trigger the network fix or the block on the firewall or the whatever needs to be done, then that's super valuable. And not only that, but then we start to approach the problem of not having enough security geeks in the world.
Yeah.
We actually can start to approach fixing that problem, which would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, and again, the messaging that I've been seeing from the security industry is very much on that operational efficiency that you just spoke of, recognizing the talent shortage and trying to operationalize and automate as much as possible. And the ones that can actually do that and aren't just messaging on that are the ones that are really interesting.
The reason why everybody messages that is because it's a direct correlation of dollars to sales. Because if I can save you $100, I can sell you $50 worth of product, right? So it's a direct correlation. I can demonstrate an ROI, which is why everybody's going to try to target that message. It's the ones that can actually, walk the walk that are the ones you want to buy. And that's the hard part about figuring out what to buy in the first place.
Yeah. A couple of the quick security news items. Skybox Security has received Common Criteria certification. I put that in there because most of the time when companies get some type of certification, I skip over it. Awards and certifications, I'm kind of like, yes, they hit the press releases really hard with those all the time. Common Criteria is kind of a big deal. Having been at Tenable when, they were going through that, it's a big deal. It's a lot of work. And really good once for a company, and kind of speaks to their position in the market once they achieve that particular certification.
Yeah, I'm a former CMO marketing guy, so I get what they're doing. But at the same time, that press release and $5 gets you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? That's about all it's worth. So, the reality is you need those certifications. You need to demonstrate that you can do it, but it's not going to drive a ton of business. But I think it's kind of cool to see them coming out. And I used to crank them out just like everybody else.
Sure,
it's just things you got to do.
Yeah, it's table stakes, I think. Yeah, and again, a low cost kind of thing to do.
Sure, costs you like $1,500 to put out the press release.
Right.
Now the work behind Common Criteria is insane, as you mentioned. I mean, that's a lot of work.
So for this now, have you looked into the SD-WAN? This seems to be a term that came out. Like when I think about in 2001 or 2000 when I was network engineer, we talked about what they're describing now as SD-WAN. We're like, we got back then, like this internet thing was still kind of like new for enterprises to actually use to connect remote offices. And so there was a lot of creative solutions. There was a lot of the hesitation where you're moving from on-premise into the cloud. When you were taking your MPLS network and, direct connections over technology that I can't even remember off the top of my head now. And you're like, well, it'd be a lot cheaper to put that over the internet. You question security and you question reliability. Of course, in the past almost 20 years, we've moved beyond that. And now there's a lot of security intertwining with this software-defined WAN. And I'm kind of like, isn't that just we're all connected to the internet and we're using point-to-point VPNs? Am I oversimplifying it here?
It's so funny you said that, because I was going to tell you I'm going to pull out the I'm stupid on this topic card because I feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I think if we both feel the same way, then that kind of might be what it's like.
Right.
I'm like, great. Okay. So you're putting a bunch of tunnels out there and you're guaranteeing some QoS. I mean, maybe they're getting down closer to the hardware layer with some of the QoS components, the quality of service components, but I might be missing something here. I'd look to the guys that in the links, I believe you have the Gartner MQ linked in there or something, and that's what this press release was around. I'd look to those guys; they'll be able to explain it a hell of a lot better than I can. But I don't see the value.
Right? Yeah, I don't know why it's getting so much attention as I've seen it in the news. Quite often.
I wish I had a better answer for you on that. I'm the same boat.
Yeah, clearly something I need to look into more, perhaps, and could probably be answered pretty quickly too, like what the what the skinny is on it.
Yeah, but if we get told it's super amazing awesomeness, and then we realize we were the dumb ones.
Right. That's happened to me certainly on the show.
Oh, me too. Lots of times.
That's part of the fun, though. It's part of the fun. So a lot of security acquisitions, and I think really just one IPO, which we can probably hit first. And this was part of my prediction that CrowdStrike even would be likely the next IPO candidate in the security space. And now we've got some better information about that they're hiring Goldman Sachs to lead their IPO. I think that was a natural exit and next kind of steps for CrowdStrike.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think it's going to be a rather successful IPO, assuming that the market doesn't turn before they actually go out. I think it'll result in a fairly successful IPO for them. I mean, they got, according to the article, I think it said $3 billion valuation, although I could be wrong. Yeah, I mean, anything in this space right now should be pretty hot, and as long as the market doesn't drop out underneath them like the week before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And some acquisitions to talk about. One that just dropped this morning. In fact, it was really ironic because I was researching potential sponsors for the show and following up on companies with all the different criteria that we have, and I got lots of tools. I mean, we'll do a segment on some of the ways that I'm trying to analyze the market to find which companies are best in this space and what their position is in the market. I was like, Dome9, it was like up on my screen, and I'm like, that's a really good one. Like, all you can track, the growth of number of employees that are being added, their previous announcements, their funding rounds, their partnership. There's a lot of things to look at. You're like, this is a really good company. This is one that I would want to work with. And more often than not, as I'm in that process, Tyler, that company gets acquired, which is speaks to our process, right? I'm like, our process is, spot on, but obviously then, once acquisition happens, that's, a lot of turmoil, so to speak, in that for that company. And Checkpoint has acquired Dome9.
Dome9's, I think, a really good company. I mean, good company or not, let's set that aside. I think they're in a great space.
Yeah. Right.
They were in a right space at the right time. As we were talking about in the previous segment, cloud is I think we're still early when it comes to migration of companies to cloud. And we're seeing such huge adoption rates already that, a company like that has significant upside. And I've been in positions where I've been trying to put together for a large company before a multi-product portfolio in the billions of dollars of size when it comes to acquisitions and things like that. This would be one of those where I would acquire it and look to kind of work it for another 18 to 24 months at a loss, expecting then to flip it around into something that's going to provide a lot of zeros of revenue for me.
Right.
Yeah. They're not full. They're nowhere near fully baked today.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think for that is if you look at just AWS and the number of different products they've built into AWS, and now you're a company and you're like, well, I want to go use the cloud. Go try and find an expert to help you navigate that. And especially from the security side. And that's where, like, I come on this show and I'm like, I want some help and guidance and expertise to advise our audience on this, to get into the nitty gritty of how do you configure and secure over 400 different, services in AWS. It's a really short list of people and, companies to that extent that can actually help you with that.
The scope is huge. I was talking with a young startup recently and their pricing model was based on workloads in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was their scale component to their pricing model. And I'm thinking, really, how many workloads are we really talking about here? How are we going to price this? And they're like, I'm thinking, okay, 10 workloads, 20 workloads, instances or whatever. And they're like, oh, no, the companies, the Fortune 1000s we're talking to are like tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of workloads in the cloud. I'm like, okay, I'm on a scale totally different.
Right.
So cloud adoption is coming, and the expertise to deliver on the security of it is almost non-existent. You could build a security consulting firm around that topic alone and be extremely successful.
Yeah, and in fact, we had someone on Application Security Weekly that was doing just that. And I'm like, dude, you're a unicorn. Like, to help people navigate, it's a huge commodity. It's a big skill and demand right now. So,
yep, for sure.
And ThreatStack is in that space as well.
Yeah, I think there's a number of vendors in that space. And what's funny, though, is why are they disclosing layoffs when Dome 9's getting acquired? Unless the Dome 9 acquisition was in a situation where they had tapered their growth.
Right.
And they were starting to get VC pressure to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's possible. That's possible that market. But that doesn't make sense to me. If the market is growing as much as we think it is, as you and I think it is, mm-hmm. why would they be tapering off? And why would ThreatStack be doing layoffs?
It's interesting what some of the analysis of ThreatStack is. They were laying off in areas but hiring in others. Like, they have open job recs, but they were laying off. So I think it was more of a shift, for ThreatStack than we're out of runway and trouble kind of thing. But it's hard to say as an outsider looking in, right?
Well, and not only that, but and I don't know if this is the case for ThreatStack. I'm not familiar with their scenario, but you also get into a situation where let's say you're 18 months early to market at
mm-hmm.
the young side of your company. You're 18 months early to market. You take your VC 18 months early. You take your capital in 18 months early. You start to burn, and what you end up getting on is a treadmill that's way too fast for your actual market, and you outpace your market. Mm-hmm. Not that your product was bad or it's a bad fit, but mm-hmm. you outpace the market with the growth of your company, and you end up burning too hard, too fast, and you got to go raise another round. And it's when you go and raise that round is when the board looks and says, should we exit now, or should we go ahead and dilute more shares out? And maybe it's just a scenario where, hey, we're going to get a multiple greater than we really wanted to try to raise at, and let's just go ahead and get out.
Right.
So maybe that's why Dome 9 exited. I don't know.
Mm. Versiv was acquired by eCentire, which is kind of interesting. I had heard of Versiv. I hadn't studied them really well. Are you familiar with either eCentire or Versiv, Tyler?
I'm not, but the headline's funny, right? AI-powered security analysis platform. Getting back to that same topic we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
Seems like everybody's doing it.
Absolutely. What else? Fortinet has acquired Cloud Threat Analytics, kind of exactly what we were talking about. ZoneFox. They kind of looked, I don't know, it was kind of a little bit of mixed messaging there on what ZoneFox actually does. They are integrated in automated cybersecurity. Oh, they acquired ZoneFox, which is a cloud-based insider threat detection and response company, which I thought was kind of interesting that they were playing in the insider threat, and then you go look at the messaging on ZoneFox, and it's like, is it really? It's insider threat, but it's also some, an analytics component to it as well, which was kind of an interesting mix.
And I also wonder, I see UEBA and machine learning technology. I wonder if a lot of these acquisitions are also, we don't have great machine learning and AI.
Yeah.
Like if we're Fortinet, for example, and I don't know if this is the case, but maybe we don't have great machine learning capability for the behavioral analytics component. We can't hire anybody that delivers it. We're just going to go plunk down whatever it is, 50, 80, 100, 150 million for one of these companies. Roll them in. We'll continue to grow the product and whatever, but it's more about getting the technology for some of these acquisitions too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that very well could have been the case for sure. I think it's funny. We talk about this a lot. Rapid7, who's also a sponsor on shows here on the network, and of course, Rapid7 being right in Boston. I have many friends that have worked there over the years. Many friends actually over the years. And it's weird because I worked for the competitor at Tenable, or at Rapid7. But now in the position I'm in, I sit back and I look at the strategic acquisitions that Rapid7 has made over the years, and I'm just like, wow, like they really just hit a grand slam after grand slam, I think, with their acquisitions. Now, of course, now I'm biased because they're a sponsor, so I'm biased by nature. But we cover acquisitions on our shows, and I'm just like, their acquisitions are just awesome.
Yeah, I think honestly it goes to Corey's, their CEO's background, right? He's a Harvard Business School guy. He knows his shit when it comes right down to it on the pure business side. Whether he's as fluent on the security side or whether he surrounds himself with extremely bright security people, I can't say. I don't know. Which he has. Yeah. I don't know him that well, but I assume he has a great consigliere group around him, right?
Yeah.
But he knows how to pull revenue and how to merge high growth acquisitions with product lines that may no longer be high growth that are maybe 10 years old, right? And what you do is you build a portfolio of a mix of those things. So you've got a certain percentage. And actually, I was having a conversation, I think, with you the other day. You kind of want to build a mall, right? And inside your mall, you want to have a Tiffany's and you want to have a Nordstrom's. And you want to have like a Blockbuster Video, right? And your Tiffany's is, let's call that your high growth bellwether product lines. And then you have your Nordstroms and your JCPenney's that do a really good job of just making some money and kind of grinding it out. And then you might have a couple of Blockbuster Videos where you've had them for a while. You don't want to get rid of those product lines yet. So you're squeezing the blood out of those turnips, right? And it's understanding the mix of those technologies that is how you balance a product portfolio. And I think Corey and Rapid7, they know how to balance the product portfolio, and they're making acquisitions at the right spots in their portfolio to be successful.
Yeah, they were really early on the acquisition route with Command in the SOAR market. I mean, they gobbled up Command when they were a seed-funded startup, and they were really awesome. And like I just happened to be like in the booth right next to Command at a conference, and I started chatting with them. Their marketing person was awesome. Their demo was awesome. I'm like, oh, that's really awesome technology. And then like I blinked and Rapid7 had gobbled them up.
Once again, you're right there on the cusp of identifying awesome just to watch it disappear.
Yes. And so T-Cell is, we actually covered, I think, at Black Hat, the application security through a web application firewall.
Yeah, T-Cell. So full disclosure, my couple employers ago was in this space, Signal Sciences, which is also a sponsor here. So from a full disclosure standpoint, I was in this market pretty closely. T-Cell, they did a great job of picking up on some of the tells that the market was giving early on about ease of use, ease of installation, potentially trumping the depth of analysis in this market. So in the application security space, the RASP vendors, some of them went really down a rat hole of, here's every line of code, here's the full data stack, here's everything you possibly need. Well, guess what? The market didn't particularly want that. The market wanted the 80-20 rule of security, where ease of use trumped security in this scenario. And T-Cell did a good job of picking up on that early and chasing that as well. And so I think this exit for them to Rapid7 is Rapid7 recognizes the value there and feels they can continue to grow that by leveraging their sales and marketing engine.
Absolutely. The last one here is Wallarm. Wallarm?
Yeah, also in the same space, Wallarm.
Oh, okay. So they're in the, what do they say? Framework for automatic security testing or FAST platform. Is that the same kind of next-gen WAF? Is that?
Next-gen WAF / and/or IAST play. I'm not sure what their differentiators are anymore. A couple of years ago, they were more of a next-gen WAF play. Yeah, so I mean, it's again another one of those similar style companies, and it looks like they've pulled in another round of funding. It's funny. I feel like a lot of these companies are running from the RASP moniker now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I didn't particularly see that coming, a couple of years ago, but a lot of those guys are running from that because it got overloaded with that too deep of analysis.
Yeah.
Right. And so the next gen WAF guys are starting to succeed.
RASP from the beginning, when I was researching it, and we still do to this day, it seemed like the analysts were really down on it. It got off to, it was a tough start, it gained some traction. And then when I would, talk to enterprises that were adopting the technology, they were more focused on like the stuff that were challenges with it than they were with the benefits. Now, being in security, And being a practitioner and protecting web applications, I could certainly see the benefit, right, over a traditional WAF, right? That regex in front of your web application never really worked for me either as a practitioner. And so I wanted something with a lot more intelligence closer to my application, and that was RAS. But now you're right, Tyler. We're seeing all kinds of diversions off of that.
That term was heavily blurred, somewhat on purpose by some marketing people. I won't put names out there, but we certainly blurred that market pretty heavily between next gen WAF, RASP, IaaS. That was all kind of a blurry space as to what was what technologically speaking, right? And I think we're starting to see some actual differentiation where they're starting to fall into literal buckets now, which is going to help the buyer, because the buyer will know, hey, I want the deep analysis that comes with IaaS, that I'm doing a lot of this manual control that I'm going to do in a QA model. And that works great for IaaS. Or I want the super lightweight, super low touch next gen WAF that does WAF value, but provides it in a way that works in the cloud, works in DevOps model, has AI behind it, et cetera. And so now that the buckets are defining a little bit better, I think we'll start to see a couple of them take off. Yeah,
it's been a really interesting space to follow. So
for sure.
Awesome. Well, that is the enterprise security news for this week. Tyler, thank you so much for filling in for John Strand and offering up your analysis.
Yeah, I love it. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. You got it. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see everyone next time.